Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second community event that we are hosting. We had one several months ago in the Performing Arts Center. Speaking to an awesome opportunity that we have in Norwalk City School District, and that is to turn 5 buildings into one beautiful building across the street from Norwalk High School. So we'd like to get to 2 facilities, and for efficiency purposes, and a lot of you that know you've seen what our current facilities are. It is time to improve what we have, and we have a chance, we have an opportunity now, unlike ever before. So we have a lot of guests and presenters here tonight that actually are experts in the field. So you're not going to hear a lot from me initially. We have from OFCC, we have Monica Brua. Sorry, Peyton Reel from OFCC. From Garmin-Miller, Monica Brua, Brian Wolf, and Tim Tarvin, who was former Shelby superintendent. So he is with Garmin-Miller now, so he can speak to obviously experience being a superintendent and now working with Garmin-Miller. We also have Mike Burns from Baird Financial, so he will be speaking to the financial component of this. So very excited about our opportunity here, and I'm glad you're here tonight, and thank you for those that are watching on the live stream as well.
All right, well, thank you very much. We're happy to be here today. I want to talk through a little bit about how things have been structured for the past several months. So the Board of Education flows information to the Executive Committee, to the Facility Task Force. We have a large group, and we have all the names on the next slide. And then into the community. And then if you can see the arrows, they also go back up. So as information and options have been discussed and coming into the group, it goes right back up to the top. So the ultimate decision maker is the Board of Education. So just understand where we are in the process. Lots of people on this list. We appreciate everybody's time and commitment the past, I don't even know how long we've been meeting, but there's been a couple of meetings that we've been having. So lots of people you might recognize on our list here for task force members.
Yeah, so the agenda for tonight is we're going to start with the OFCC master plan, talk about that process, and then get into what we call the Norwalk Truckers process. So we'll review that, and then we're going to get into talking about the LFIs. I guess by raise of hands, who wasn't at the first community meeting? Anybody here? Okay, so there's a few. Okay, so we're going to talk and continue to talk about the locally funded initiatives. They're called LFIs. It was briefly discussed at the first community meeting, but we now have further information after the planning has continued. So we'll talk about that. And then Mike's going to get into the financial picture to explain that, and then just talk about some of the next steps. So like Brad said, there's several others that are going to be talking throughout the presentation. So hopefully it's informational. And Monica will start us off with master plan for OFCC.
And one thing, Monica, if I could say, if you have a question that comes up like pertinent to that slide, what's happening right now, we want you to ask it right away. So yes, we have a presentation ready to roll, but at the same time, if there's something, we don't want you to wait until an hour later and then ask those questions. So if it's tied to something, please put your hand up. We want this to be dialogue rather than a sterile presentation and then questions at the end. So if something comes up and you want to ask right now, please put your hand up and we'll make sure we address it.
That said, there is financial information and talking about millage. It's all later. Everyone goes down to the bottom line. So that's him. That's Mike's part. So the OFCC, Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, they are the government entity out of Columbus that manages the K-12 building projects. So they come with state money and they pair it up with local money. The other districts around here, you probably have heard, have gotten some new buildings or renovations and things like that. So that is the OFCC. The program that Norwalk is participating in and has the ability to participate in is called the Classroom Facilities Assistance Program. And back in 2008 is when this initial planning started. Not much happened with it, but it was back then. I was working with Norwalk, with my previous employer, helping OFCC kind of do this master plan. It wasn't the right time, so nothing really came of it. But in 2020 is when the district said, hey, let's get back into this. We still have some serious needs. And so in conversation with OFCC, it came about last year where OFCC said, hey, we are ready to have money for your district. Are you ready? And so that's when all of this, important planning took place. And so the master plan was developed. The master plan then would then go to the controlling board, the commission in July to get approved by the OFCC. And then the controlling board sets aside the money for your part, or the state part of the project. And then you have your 16 months to raise your local share. So that's how, and the kind of the details with OFCC, they look at, it's really calculation-based, numbers-based on enrollment, the number of students that will fit into the buildings that you have. So it's pretty easy to look at enrollment plus how your buildings are. That comes up with the development of the master plan. So your enrollment, an enrollment projection was done recently. It's a 10-year projection. If you're increasing at the end of 10 years, that 10th year is used in the master plan. Your enrollment was declining slightly. So 2,252 students have been identified in the school year 28-29. And so what that means is that, the idea is when you're using OFCC money, they want to look at the most efficient project, most efficient use of funds, because they have money for the whole state. And so in a 2,200 or under 3,000 situation, typically the recommendation is a 2-building solution. So that's where we are. Look at those cuties.
So there was an OFCC assessment that was done back in 2008 on all the school buildings within the district. And then back in 2020, we came in and we validated those assessments. We went through just to make sure between 2008 and 2020 work can get done. So we went through all the buildings to validate that. If there's boilers replaced, we're going to document that. Windows, doors replaced, flooring, HVAC, et cetera. You can see the list here of all the different items. There's 23 points that we reviewed. So we took a really good look through all the buildings. We then updated that again in 2023. We didn't do a large review of all the buildings. It was more sitting with the custodial and the maintenance, just getting information from them saying, hey, did you replace anything? But the big thing is replacing or updating the numbers because you know how construction's changed over the last 4 or 5 years. So we wanted to keep that up to date as much as possible so that we can get a good picture of what it would take if you decide to replace or if you decide to renovate all these buildings.
The last item is that we not only look at the systems, but we look at how it's working for your population. And one of the things that we found is back in 2008, everybody knew that you built this great high school with your own dollars. We knew that it was bigger than what you would get for OFCC. Again, OFCC is 25 students in the classroom, 900 square feet. Classrooms are used 85% of the time. So there's not a lot of excess space in those buildings. So you have a great high school, right? Well, in 2008, somebody added 60,000 square feet onto it because they on the second floor plan, they just assumed that's usable space. And so all along in all those years, as we were kind of going down, man, how can we find more space? So we started looking at the drawings, and Dan was able to give us these drawings. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And so we were able to find that space, correct it, and that saves you a lot of money in LFI down the road. And I'm going to point that out later. But I just, again, it's a big comprehensive look at your facilities.
Yeah, so we just, through the assessment, we just took some photographs. Just wanted to share because a lot of people don't get inside the buildings. You see the outside, but you don't get inside. So here's just a few photos just showing that the buildings are aging. They're in need of either repair or replacement. So just a few photos here. Here's some of the middle school. Just giving you an idea of what it's like inside the buildings. And we certainly, I'm sure you can visit these schools at any time if you wanted to take a tour. So that essentially puts it to a summary. So here's the 5 buildings that you can see. We got League, Maplehurst, Pleasant, Main Street, and the middle school. And you can see what the renovation cost is for each of those. And there's a percentage underneath, and I don't know if you can see that in the back of the room. But the way that the calculation works is if there's a 66% replacement to build new percentage, it's going to be recommended that that becomes a new building, that you don't do any renovations because of that cost to replace versus renovate. You can see that they all exceed that 66% with Pleasant and the middle school. You're just teetering over that, but obviously it's going to continue to get worse. So you can see the dollars there, and after looking at it and seeing what it would cost to renovate the old buildings, that's when it was kind of an overwhelming decision from the task force to look at doing a new PreK-8. So
I'll point out here too that you can keep these buildings and do some eligible, some co-funded demolition. So you can keep part of a building and you still get that co-funded to demolish the building. Obviously, OFCC doesn't want to keep buildings that are not being used and then get dilapidated and nobody's caring for them. So their idea is, if it's they have an allowance for abatement and demolition, but you can keep you can use the buildings as well for something that is outside of the funding for K-12 instruction. And so this process also kind of was going along the same lines of what the facility task force was doing. So when Brian said this information, this is what the task force wanted, we'll talk a little bit more about what the task force was going through in their exercises at the same time to get to that point. Do you want to touch on anything with the buildings?
Yeah, so 2 of the buildings that we definitely want to use, we've talked, county commissioner here in the room, we talked about daycare. We don't have enough daycare facilities for our kids in Norwalk and Huron County. So that is a potential for Pleasant. So when you look at the percentages there of 67 at Pleasant, 68 at middle school, those are definite 2 schools of our other 5 kid buildings that's not Norwalk High School that we do intend to use. While there's no final decisions, you look at Pleasant, it's single level. It would be a great place for daycare. You want to talk about changing education and change the dynamic of the kids that are coming into your school system, start young, and that would be the approach that you'd want. So that is one angle for Pleasant Elementary that we would love to have. Middle school, we're talking Boys and Girls Club. So Janice Smith is in the room here. So she has been having Boys and Girls Club at Pleasant Elementary. And it's difficult with the busing, the schedules, all the different kids that are coming in. And that's an after-school program if you're not familiar with that part. We're saying the middle school itself could be a great place for Boys and Girls Club as an after-school program. Partner with the city, have activities. We have a beautiful gym, foyer classrooms there. That is a space, we have tennis courts there. So clearly it's going to be part of our picture of kids that are going through our district, that they're going to be a part and they're going to have access to it. We're just saying right now, it may not be part of the PK-12 educational experience. But those are clearly 2 buildings that you say, yeah, they have definite usage. And I'm sure if we went around the room, you could think of other usages that we could use those spaces for that would benefit our city school district, the city itself, and or the county. A lot of things that are available, and those are buildings based on that you could make some changes and retrofit, repurpose it, and make those happen. Other places, and I will say the one that's a definite, you would say Maplehurst, probably not a lot of discussion. With the executive team, with the board, with our task force, that is one that becomes very simple to say, look at that space. How many have been at Maplehurst? Your kids have gone through, you've seen, you're saying, would you say, yes, it's time, abate, demolish? That would be a simple one of the 5 buildings we're looking at to say, we need to take action because that is some prime property there. And it would have purposes for other, whether it be a builder, example, that would be a great spot for that. So that's kind of the definite end of, we say Maplehurst on that end. I give you Pleasant and middle school as usage, and then you're saying League, Main Street. Those are discussion points we need to have as to what that purpose would be going forward. One building that is not on here is central office because kids have not been in that space, so that's on Benedict. That's what we call our central office, the board office. That is not part of that calculation because it has not had kids in that space. So maybe you can speak to that. That's why allowance is not given for that area. So.
Yeah, absolutely right. In the eyes of, I would say, correctly, in the eyes of OFCC, it's your building and kids aren't in there. OFCC is in the business of providing, great facilities for students in K-12. So, all right. So we go to what the trucker process is. And so again, OFCC by the number of students, facilities. But we know that you want more, better than that, maybe. And so there's a lot of things that come into play. What kind of programs are you offering? So what the students need? What kind of, what about the staff? So back in, I think, January, we had a staff visioning session all day, the whole staff, right? Morning was one, the afternoon was one. So people, they were involved in talking through some of what their needs are. The community, so a couple community meetings, the task force is made up of a lot of different community folks, and then working with the OFCC. So, as they come together, those circles come together, and we get to that sweet spot. That's really ideal. And so there's a lot of activity and pieces and parts that make up that. And I think we have a couple of folks that want to share some of that.
So Robin Rogers and Carrie Stefani and Mike Connie is also on our task force. So we wanted them to speak to the process that we did. So some of the kind of like the angle, what we're pointing toward, those are those discussions that have taken place. And the task force, as you saw that list, made up of educators, made up of business, made up of the mayor, police chief, a good cross section of our community.
So as I said, we talked a lot about the want/needs. So to me, and I feel like to the task force, we're really talking about what's best for our students and how can we best serve them. So that was really how our discussion went. It involved going through a lot of different areas and picking priorities and what we felt was most important and how best to serve the community as a whole. So. Okay. Well, so sorry. If we go back to if you hadn't read the slide, I'm not one to read off the slides, but we obviously have one of the largest in our area, clearly, and so we have more diversity than the other schools in the area. That's definitely something that sets us aside. We have diverse language needs, and so that's an area that other schools nearby do not have. A lot of different special needs classes as well. So those are areas that we certainly need to acknowledge in our buildings and make sure that we have suitable spaces for everyone.
I think too that another thing that sets you apart is being disconnected. I think that was something I remember hearing. 6 different buildings. Everyone is out there. Other school districts may not have it. There's more community. So I just wanted to point out that was.
It's not always super easy to have vertical alignment meetings. No. We did fortunately just have meetings, but we're obviously all kind of in different islands.
I can share with you. My name's Mike Connie. I was with the Norwood Police Department from 1989 to 2021 when I retired. I retired as chief of police. I was super fortunate to be asked to come back out of retirement as a school resource officer for the Norwood City School District. So after some discussion with my wife, of course, decided that it was a great idea. And I'm going to tell you from the bottom of my heart and very honestly, out of my going on 35 years in law enforcement, this has been hands down the very best year I've had. Now, I'm getting a lot of steps in each day because I am traveling from building to building and trying to be in each one. To me, bringing them all together in a complex that's situated close proximity to each other is an absolutely awesome idea. I can tell you why I support it and why I feel strongly about it. I was born and raised here. I was here when the new high school was built, or being built. I remember it happening. And I could see the change it had and the great impact it had on this community. And we're still obviously receiving those benefits. I see the good side that comes out of this. I don't really see the downside. And I understand, taxes and all these other things that everybody's concerned about. Obviously, I'm concerned about it. But in my mind, where this money is going is well worth it. And it's an incredible opportunity. That's what I've gathered at the task force meetings that I've attended.
Do you think it would be more safe to have two campuses or versus a single?
Absolutely. It's my feeling that safety obviously is probably one of my number one concerns. And the Norwalk City School District has done an awful lot to provide for the safety of the students, the staff members, visitors, and everybody, that comes into contact with our school system. But you can only do so much with what you have existing. That's another absolute plus to the new facility. That security will be, at the forefront in designing it to keep things safe. I feel like we're very safe. I don't want you to, my Connie's trying to say we're extremely safe, but it will definitely be a benefit in that respect.
I'm Carrie Stefani. I teach 5th grade. This is my 21st year at Main Street School. And I think the neatest thing for me when we all met together as a group was we all shared, what is our common goal? What are our needs? And hearing all the people share, like their kids went through Norwalk and the future of Norwalk. And then when we met with our small groups, we talked about our priorities. What are our needs? Because we are at 6 different buildings, and how can we make our district even better? Because everybody had said Norwalk is a great place to be, and everybody shared, their kids went and got a great education. But moving forward, how could we be even better? And so that's when we talked about our common needs and generated a list of those needs.
And then they each had stickers, right, to go around and put little stickers on of what they value.
So I feel like these charts are a little could be confusing. So we had dollar amounts and we were supposed to put the amounts, actually cent amounts, I think. And we had to put them in different places that we felt the money was needed most. So all of these things are important. So it wasn't that they weren't important. I know I can speak for myself. So obviously cost is going to always be important. So it's currently listed as not as important, but that's, to me, it was just kind of a given, as well as communication and plan. Those are things that are absolutely going to happen because they're essential. So you can see, so if you actually look at the bottom of the chart, that's where we felt like these things are incredibly important moving forward in planning a new building. So the flexible space, innovative technology, those are all things that are huge. We already talked about our diverse population, but also we have growing programs. We're so blessed to have amazing things happening for so many of our students. So we have, a growing robotics program, STEM education, theater, yes, theater and our arts programs, our music departments. We're just blessed in a ton of different areas. So having that flexible space that is innovative and conducive to continuing to provide those programs for all of our grades is massive moving forward. Obviously, we also felt that the community and the staff, it's so important because we're a team and we need to be a team. And so moving forward to make a new building happen, we have to recognize that we're all here for the best of our students and our children and the future of Norwalk. So those were two things that are absolutely essential. The potential growth. When Norwalk High School was built, I graduated in 2001 from Norwalk High School, so I didn't get to attend this building, though I've been happy to be a staff member here. But it was massive, and we had growth. We absolutely had growth, and it's so important that if that happens again with, a new building generating excitement and people moving to Norwalk, which we always hope for, we have to be able to increase our space. So those things are incredibly important. For those of you that have students in different buildings, or maybe only students in one building, traffic flow is also, I teach at League. I've taught at League for a very long time. We're in our nice little block, which I love League. But there's things that can improve if we have a new building. And so those were some of our most important. Special education, we've already mentioned. So that's there, but again, I can speak for myself. I feel like that's a necessary thing. It's going to happen because that's what we need. So it wasn't necessarily unimportant.
So I'm sorry, real quick again. blue versus orange was,
So this is actually, the amount of dollars that was on that particular sheet, so 9150 was on flexible space. And then this was the average sticker price, and so they had a $5, a 3, a 2, a 1, and a 50 cents. And so what's, you think like, wow, you can see everybody wanted flexible space, everyone's passionate about that. But if you look at, like, community spend has an average of over $3.19, that means a lot of people put their $5 stickers on there. A lot of people were really strong about making sure that the community and staff had an opinion, had their voices heard. And so that was really, it's the same list, it's just kind of we swap a little bit, parking moved a little bit, just things moved a little bit, just a different way to look at it. But the result was,
Yes,
I knew,
it's,
yes.
yeah,
I knew
go ahead.
school building was a priority for everybody.
It seems like that's where we are. We have a really awesome opportunity.
thank you. So, here's the OFCC master plan. This is what is the co-funded master plan, co-funded, so state money, local money working together, 183,820 square feet for a PK-8 population. That is about $69.8 million for a new PK-8 building. And then we have allowances for abatement and demolition for all 5 of those buildings listed for a total cost of $73 million is the project. And then when you look at the split that the state is going to bring in, it's a little over $52 million. For your local share is $20 million. This is the co-funded piece. And I have this little asterisk here. Remember I mentioned that we were able to rectify the size of the high school. So this you would have had to pay another, I don't know, about $20 million on top of that if we were to have, say, okay, your high school is really 225,000 square feet instead of it's 160 or 170,000 square feet. So we were able to, as OFCC looks at a building and says, we're gonna put students in and fill up all of that space on paper, 25 students in a room. Even though it doesn't fit your programs, it doesn't fit your robotics program or your music program or all of that. So that was a benefit. So we're looking at a starting cost of $20.4 million.
Okay, so getting into the site, I know if you were at the previous community meeting, you saw this, but here's just to kind of giving you a lay of where the high school is and then the property right across the street from the high school. We talked several times about 20 acres. It just wasn't going to fit. It doesn't even have the proper amount of square footage to put a PK building of this size on. So now we're looking at getting some land, roughly 12 acres up to 17 acres. And then this is the layout that is being proposed. Plenty of space for parking, plenty of space for circulation, plenty of space for future expansion into the future as the district grows, and then also having the PE and multi-purpose fields, which is something that's required as part of this program. You can see in the white, that's the circulation for the parent drop-off, and then the yellow around the backside is for buses, so creating that separation between the two, again, a huge safety issue that we want to address. There is still going to be some components of the 2-story with this. It's roughly, we said 183,000 square feet, so we're going to look at different options, but this right now has some components of a 2-story, but the center core within this area right in here would all be 1 story. But again, that final design will be forthcoming, but the square foot is 183,000. So I know a lot of you saw this in the previous one, but we wanted to share it again. So, any questions on that?
so who get the land then?
So we have not secured additional land, so we have 20 acres. Very optimistic about what the future holds with new county commissioners. So that is very much the plan. We believe we'll be able to talk. and make things happen. But we have not been able to get beyond the 20 acres. So the question before was, can we do it on 20 acres? Clearly, you're not doing the part that you need with like recommendation of 37 acres. You clearly can't, because OFCC, they want you to have the field. You need recess areas. It's a competitive, given the fact that it's middle school there. So we need that additional space. So that is the part that we're looking forward to in January 2025 of speaking to some new individuals for sure. Yes. Yep.
With the timing of determining whether we have the additional land, are there costs at risk? Because if the land doesn't get allotted to the school district?
Yeah, so we have 16 months. So if we're successful and we get signed off by the commission, and looking at Peyton now with OFCC, so if that money's released, we have 16 months to secure our local piece. So we're essentially looking at presidential November 24, May of 25, and November of the following year of 25. So we have 3 opportunities to go to the voters to say, here's what it's going to be to secure our local piece in order to have access to the state amount. So the question we all have is, do you go to the voters in November? And our current thought, and this is task force speaking, so a group of 40 people, the current thought is, yes, we still should go to the voters, not give up that one opportunity, still go to the voters, knowing that there's this little piece, this little caveat that's still here on the side, that we're confident, but I can't say anything more than confidence. Yes.
So I think your question was, is there any financial costs?
Yeah, so like if they spend a lot of money planning it for this site and then they have to change it, there's costs involved in replanning and stuff. Right? So that's good. That's part of my question.
We're not intending, so the part where they're making money in that whole design piece will be after that. So we've had those checks as far as our timing of this, because otherwise you'd say, why would you not wait then? If you are able to secure additional acreage, why would you not wait? We're saying we still can secure that. They're not doing their part of designing, because ultimately when we look at, when they go back to like the ed visioning, we want to know what that building's going to look like, because it is a whole other world of how you design that building. Yeah. It's not going to look like Norwalk High School, because you look at Norwalk High School, it was designed post-Columbine. You look at, when you come in, it's a beautiful entrance and the kid entrance, but you're not having what every school has now, which is basically almost like a Sally Port setup. You go in, you have people within locked doors, you're getting buzzed in. I mean, we have front door access. So we have a lot of safety features that Mike Connie referenced. So like those designs are different, and it's the same with designing. I think Peyton and Dan Ballman were in Columbus and talking about like, how do classrooms even look? This traditional sense of like, count how many teachers I have, and we have a long straight hallway, and we just have classrooms down the way because that's what we do. Like, that's not the reality. We can be effective at how we have that space of flexible spending or flexible usage of that space, where a garage door comes up, doors open up, because right now that traditional old sense of how buildings are designed, that will change a whole lot. So the whole one teacher, one classroom, that won't be the case going forward. I'm going to reference to go on the planning and other things that are outside of my area.
Yeah, if I could just answer your question directly about the cost. Let's say we go in November and pass the bond issue. In November, the community votes yes, and we pass the bond issue. And let's just say the land doesn't come through right away. There's no real direct costs. There might be some minimal costs here and there. I can't say it's going to be totally zero costs. But essentially what happens is once the bond issue is approved in November, it's going to take Garmin Miller or the architect involved a while to draw out the plans and come up with the plans. We're not going to break ground in December. You know, we're a year away from breaking ground. So we have a lot of time built in there that we could figure out the land, let the commissioners get in, whatever the case might be, figure out the land. If the land doesn't come through, absolute worst case scenario, we're not going to issue the bonds until we know we have the land in place in the project that the school is comfortable with. So to answer your question directly, there is no major, significant costs involved because of the land. I think that was your question, right?
Yeah.
So,
Can I
Thank you, take it directly here. It was a circle process to get to that direct answer.
That's really good information.
Brad, can I follow up on that question a minute? The 20 acres that you're talking about, you have,
Yes,
are you in control of that? Do you own it?
yes,
You own the 20?
correct.
Okay.
So this approximate 50-acre field across the way, we are with Huron County Commissioners. So local farmer is leasing that. That's been for years and years of doing that. But that 20 acres is ours. That is secured, that's locked. So pretty much right across from Norwalk High School, here in County Commissioners own on both sides of that property. So that's currently the case. So yeah, 20 is ours. There's no stipulation with that.
Nobody
So
can
if you're
take
saying
away-
like, we decide we should go, 4 levels high, so we have, places to go with recess and all that recreational, and the big thing we haven't talked about is, I think it was referenced here, is the parking, getting parent pickup in. Because any of you have been to all the different buildings, like, that is a major significant thing. So when you're saying we're bringing 1,700 kids on that side, X number of kids on this side, we have to get parents, we have to get drivers, grandparents, whoever that be, off of Shady Lane. So in that design, there has to be space for people to be, when you get to the property, whether it be the Cedar Point almost turnstile we drive through before I get to that horseshoe to pick up my child, like, that is critical. That is a major play that has to happen, because if you've seen Pleasant Elementary, it's backed out on Main Street, wrapped around, jamming up traffic. That's gonna have to be smart design. We're gonna have to have land to get people off Shady Lane. Because you look at Major Hospital, Sheriff Corbin, you have significant areas here, and you wanna have access to how do I get in, how do I get out? Because you have a lot of traffic flow that way. So that has to be looked at clearly.
I told you last week
Mhm.
that the middle school is my
Right,
issue, and I've got a bug about it.
right,
But I found
A new one?
a way to get away around that for you.
okay.
Did you guys ever look at the fact of trying to use the middle school acreage for the new grade school? If you purchased the Huron County Children's Services building on Benedict, maybe the house next to it, now you've got access to Benedict and Christie, and we're not tying up Shady Lane, and we're getting, the buildings are basically in the same proximity, but you're not having all the traffic problems. If you could do that in a situation where in phases, where phase 1 would be purchasing the building on Benedict. Phase 2, you come in and you build portion of the building enough that the 7th grade, 8th grade, and Main Street School gets moved into that. Then you demo the portion of the middle school where the classrooms and the library are, to finish building what's necessary for your K through 5. But something like that, did you ever look at
So-
anything like that?
We did, and obviously the diagram of, you're saying the number of students we have, so if you're projecting out, say 1,700 kids on the space we need, the acreage is not there. So if you look at the acreage there, so other people have said, if you look at Sandusky City Schools, there's a lot, Willard's done it as well, where you're building your complex, you're building your setup while your school's in operation. And that's set up, we move the kids over, you slide them over, and then you demolish that space. There is not adequate space there for this, because that's a significant footprint. When you're saying you have a competitive of that side, all the different, because nobody who has young children want to say, we have one area that is a playground that's going to be for a 1st grade and a 5th grader or 6th grader. So like clearly in their design element, those are separated. So like that's a massive amount of space. So I completely agree with you. If you're thinking like there, we've been actually up from Norwalk High School, this ground in this area. Could you do that if you could expand that? Like those are the 2 primary areas we looked at of currently things that we either own or would have access to negotiate and talking to people to make things happen. But the footprint alone was the reason that we got away from that, Jim. Yeah.
All right, great question. So
We have an orchestra concert tonight, so I can tell you, I'll stay here all night, but 7 o'clock, we have an awesome orchestra concert. So if you want to see that, you will enjoy it. And then tomorrow, Carol Mason, unbelievable teacher, it's her final concert. So if you want entertainment after this meeting tonight, go next door. We have orchestra tomorrow night. Carol Mason, there'll be a lot of tears, because if you know her, she's top shelf for sure. So So we'll go till about 6:50, and then that camera's gonna disappear because it's going next door to get film of the orchestra. So there's a little advertisement there, Bray, for you.
Do you have something yet? Oh, okay. So we're gonna move on. Oh, we locked our screen, you broke us, broke it down. So we're gonna talk about locally funded initiatives. So, we had, the task force talk about a lot of different options. That's why it's on here as a potential. Again, locally funded initiative, all of this is 100%. The state is not contributing anything towards this LFI, these LFIs. And so typical ones that we see probably in every school district that we work on is additional square feet, because it's a calculation base to get the classrooms, but to get something else, to get above and beyond that baseline is going to be on your dollar. And that's kind of where we were talking before with the task force. What kind of priorities do you have? Metal roof is another one. So it can be part of the design manual, but oftentimes it's the first thing that gets slashed a little bit. And so if you want that, and you want that look, and you want those qualities that the metal roof brings, we want to make sure we put that in the budget right away. Terrazzo floors. Again, that's a durable product that's particularly in the hallways or the common areas, dining and maybe the center entrance. Those are the only spaces that we talked in the task force is where we would put that. But that's another piece that's above and beyond the design manual. So additional site, we have found that particularly we've got a lot of drives. We've found that OFCC doesn't always have the budget that's going to support maybe the site work that you need. And so we added a little bit of money for that. We'll get to the dollars in a second. I'm talking through this here. And then the administration was looking at space to get out of the Benedict building. So we have some budget in there for that. Bus garage as well. So kind of, you can talk to that. I don't want to speak through those.
Yeah, so we are excited to have central office move to where kids are. So you talk about, people having to move different locations, like it only makes sense. Any good functional district has their people close where that's where the action is. Any place where central office, anything is off-site, that makes zero sense. So the two things you're looking at, is that built into part of this new building, or is that a standalone? So speaking with Garmin Miller, districts, communities choose differently there, and sometimes there's benefits financially why you want a standalone, which is still on that same footprint, you're there, and there'd be reasons as to why you want to be built into that new PreK-8. So we think that's critical. And obviously, if we would do that, there would be value on the Benedict property. There would be value there that we're getting appraisal on, we're getting valuation ran on what are those properties worth. Some folks in this community have looked at, housing. Could you turn Benedict potentially into housing? You have, 4 condos, apartment. We have places where nurses, new teachers can go. So people have talked kind of different ideas, but that would be a property that we would say, yeah, that would have some value there at that location, and that could bring money into the district because we see the benefit of having the administrative building here. Just like Mike Connie is our school resource officer, you're here, it's compact, things will be better because of that. So we're looking forward to doing that. Bus garage is very clear. We're gonna have a lot of students in this area of town. So the beauty of the past, the one thing I will argue is, yeah, you had community schools where kids could walk to the nearby school, and that's gone on for years and years and years. So now you're saying, you're having to pick up and do a lot more in transportation because you're bringing kids out here that clearly cannot walk. We're not necessarily going to be having our drivers go to Whitney Contractor Stadium, pick up the buses, come here. That just makes sense to either co-locate it on the existing property where the school will be built, or a second consideration brought up by the task force that we looked at would be the middle school itself. So go back to what I had mentioned earlier. If we would say we abate, demolish what I'll call the 6th and 7th grade hallways, that with the office, and we keep the footprint, which is the cafeteria, the gym, those back classrooms, Boys and Girls Club, for sure, potentially other uses. That bus garage could also go there. So that's dependent on when you ask the land question, well, if we don't have enough land there, we're not going to try to squeeze in a bus garage and shoehorn that in when we want to make sure we capitalize and maximize that space for our kids and what that footprint will look like. That's clearly the case. But if you were to demolish a couple hallways in that middle school, you could do your setback. It could be there. You still have your parking for other usage. We have our tennis courts. That's still very much in play in our district, and it could be used as such. You know, likely, if you look at most bus garage scenarios, they are putting a fence around those. And then we're looking at doing multiple bays. Not bays to cover every bus, because then you could get into that ridiculous figure of 5 to 10 million. We're looking at several million to have the bays to address that you have a lift, you have a car, a bus wash, and then addressing tractors and other vehicles for the district that need to be under roof. So we're saying simply that, and then having a location that would be in that. So those are kind of the two areas that we've talked about. Additional land, obviously that typically is not a pretty thing. We would tuck it on the tree line closer to Route 20. Obviously the pretty parts of your building will be up front with your fields of play. If it was middle school, that's where it would be. So those are kind of the two talks of where a bus garage could be, bringing it closer to where the action is, where all of our bus drivers and our kids are. So.
Okay, thank you. The last item is a rubber playground surface. There is an allowance in the master plan for enhanced flooring on the playground, but we added a little bit more to make sure that that budget is going to support it, especially having the two different playgrounds for the different kiddos. So this is the first part, which is the square footage. So one of the things that we spent some time working on is called a program of requirements, a POR. And that identifies all of the spaces within the building: academic, special education, dining, food service, art, music, PE, all of the spaces, and said to the administration and the team, you know, what do you need in this building? And so, you know, we were going through how many classrooms you needed. And, you know, one of the things that's, again, with OFCC is 25 students, you know, you have 100, first graders, you get 4 classrooms, right? You can do that math pretty easily, but that's 25 in a classroom. At the young elementary level, you know, the district had said, we don't want 25 students. A lot of school districts don't want 25 students. You want smaller class sizes, so you add a classroom or 2. And so that's what we did to get a couple more classrooms. But learning labs, STEM, robotics, hey, so-and-so has a music class that we have, or an advanced, language class, or whatever that may be. So we went through all of these different areas and identified another 41,000 square feet of space to add to that building to get to you the program that you need. Brian's going to talk about the rest.
Yes. So Monica mentioned the metal roof as being potentially an LFI if the budget doesn't really support the project. So having money in there for a metal roof to guarantee it, that from day one we're putting a metal roof on there. So we have approximately 141,000 square feet allocated, simply because it's not going to be all one story. We have some terrazzo floors.
Right, if I can jump in real quick.
Sure.
One thing always kind of blows my mind, I work with a lot of school districts throughout the state, is the cost of roofs. If you think about your own roof, it's 15,000, 10,000, whatever. That's a lot of money, you and I, right? But schools, the roofs are very, very expensive. Can you share the warranty on a shingle roof versus the metal roof?
Yeah, so we've done shingle roofs. We've done, we call them rubber roofs, membrane roof. We actually did a shingle roof at Shelby. The cost difference between the two, a shingle roof will run anywhere from $18 to $22 a square foot, whereas your metal, you can see there, you're at $33 a square foot for a metal roof. But the warranty on the shingle roof, you're going to get probably 20 years for the warranty, potentially 20 years of life out of the shingle roof. It's a lot. It's not just throwing plywood down, putting your underlayment on, and putting the shingles on. It's a pretty elaborate system with ventilation, with expansion, and so forth. It was a pretty complicated process at Shelby. With the metal roof, it's going to be 50, 60 years of life, potentially even more. And you're going to get a longer warranty on the metal roof as well. Warranties do cost. So if you want to upgrade the warranty, it's just going to be more expensive. So once we figure out where we're at, we'll land on a warranty that makes sense for the district. But the life of it is twice as long as the shingle roof. Membrane roofs, you're really only gonna do membrane roofs when you have a flat surface. There are some districts that have done that, where they have, your gabled roofs, and they'll put a rubber membrane on it, and then they'll add ribs to it to make it look like a metal roof, and the cost of that is right at a metal roof. So districts are going away from that because they would rather have the warranty and the lifespan of a metal roof. So, good point. Terrazzo floors. Originally, we had this at around 33,000 square feet. Because when we did that program of requirements, one of the things that auto calculates is corridors. So as you continue to put square footage in with the rooms, et cetera, it's automatically building in square footage for the corridors. Does it always meet that 33,000 square feet? No, it just really depends on the efficiency of the design. Sometimes it can go over. If you want 10, 12-foot wide corridors everywhere, obviously it's going to add square footage to it. But what we did is we talked about having the main entrance area, the commons area where the dining is, more of your high traffic areas of being that terrazzo. So we cut that to 15,000 square feet. The additional site costs, we put in $500,000 additional dollars in there to make sure that we can get those, the bus circulation and the parent drop off to ensure that we can have that. The last thing we want to do is run out of money when it comes to site, and then we lack on that. So we got $500,000 in there. The administration space, working with the administration, we're going to have roughly 5,000 square feet of administration space. So at a cost of $377, we're roughly at $1.8 million.
That 377 is from the master plan, and so that's having that board office or the administration office attached to the building. And so if you attach something to an OFCC project, it is that cost per square foot.
Yeah.
And so we have to use that.
So that 377 is something that's set. And obviously, depending on how we design it, the materials that we use, it can fluctuate up and down from that. So that's where that design comes in. But 377 is right now what that average is in this area.
So Brian, financial benefit of being a standalone, financial piece only.
Financial piece, it would be likely less expensive if you detached it. Because you're not, if you attach it to the building, now you have to come up with all the codes of the school. So your fire suppressing it, all those codes that go along with it. When you do it separate, the codes change because the use group changes, which I know you will do. But it would likely be less expensive. The bus garage, you can see, I know Brad talked about not having every bus under cover. So we're looking at 4,800 square feet for the bus garage, which would have your maintenance, your lift, and your wash bay. One lift, roughly $1.8 million for that. And then the rubber playground surface, we calculated $250,000 to be in that ballpark for the playground surface. So those are all the costs. So now the total. So when you add that all up, you can see the top line. Here's that master plan percentage, 20 million that Monica reviewed, and then you can see all the dollars underneath. So once you bring all those LFIs into the picture, it's roughly now going to be a local share of 45 million for the total project. And Mike's going to kind of get into the dollars and cents of it and explain what that's going to look like from a financial perspective.
And before we move on, just one point I want to point out about the metal roof and the floor. To me, that looks like big dollar amounts, right? It's always kind of scary when you see big dollar amounts like that. But this is not luxury items. They could be luxury items, but they're really making the useful life a lot longer. If you do a shingle roof, you're going to come back in 15 years. Let's face it. There's going to be wind damage, rain damage. 15 years going to come back. That's going to cost $2 million, give or take, in today's dollars. And we just went through inflation. How much has gas changed over the last 15 years per gallon? How much was a gallon of milk 15 years ago? How much was a new car 15 years ago? How much was a double hamburger from McDonald's? All those costs went up a ton over 15 years, right? Do you think the shingle roof's going to be a $2 million project 15 years from now? I don't think so. It's probably going to be a lot more. It might be a $4.5 million roof. So putting a metal roof on, putting nice flooring down that lasts for years and years, it's going to cost a little more today but it's gonna save the taxpayers, your grandchildren, your children down the road from having to deal with these big expenses. So to me, it scared me too when I saw it. And I'm sure some of you saw it, like, holy cow, that's a lot of money. But it's all well spent money. It's not like there's gonna be something in there that you don't really need.
So, so those are the major decisions made. So all of you that were part of making Norwalk High School happen, you saw what was a priority. You saw what's a priority. What do we have here? We have metal. We see that as a priority. You look at the Trazo, we're looking to essentially mirror what we're doing there, which is like put it in your show areas. Put it in your places where you can have your color, your school logo. That's the area. We're not talking the entire building because there's plenty of good flooring that exists nowadays. But we're saying when you come into that space, that's what we're having. So if you know Norwalk High School, that's essentially what we have right here. So we're basically, we're having that ideal look of like, what was the value years and years ago, over 2 decades ago? Yeah, we saw the value in a metal roof. And to say we're going to have something that's going to be lesser quality that we just have to pay more money for, let's do it right the first time. That's the argument.
Well, that was the fun part of the whole presentation. Now you gotta talk about numbers, and no one likes talking about numbers, right? Thank you, all of you that came out tonight. I know it's a Monday night, kind of early, we appreciate it. Just to recap real quickly. First of all, this is a great situation. And I work with over 100 school districts and cities, townships, counties throughout the state of Ohio. I had a couple dozen, 15 or so schools have bond issues on the ballot, the last 2 ballot issues in March and in November. I got 6 on the ballot this November. I tell you all this not to brag about the business I have, but I tell you this because all those schools would love to be in your shoes. Their situation is not nearly as good as your situation because OFCC is stepping up to the plate. You know, they're coming out and your numbers up with the CFAB money. That's a huge win, huge win. They have that money for CFAB. A lot of my clients are going through another program called ELP, and they're hoping to get the money 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. That's a big hope, you know, and they're paying the bill today. You guys got CFAB money come in. That's a huge win. Garvin Miller, the superintendent, the treasurer, Dan as well. You guys all did a really good job finding that additional square footage. And I said this last time, so I apologize for repeating myself. That's a $20 million win for this school district, that this team, I wish I was part of it. I didn't do anything, the team did it. But that's $20 million that they found for you. That's like a winning lottery ticket, you know? So you got some real wins happening. And, you know, once we figure out this land and get the land figured out, this is going to be a home run, assuming the community comes out to support it. But we understand why the community may not support it. But I just want to point out why some of the wins that you have in front of you. And the last win you have is the millage rates and the cost per $100,000 home. I'm working with school districts that are 7, 8, 9, 10 mills. That's some real money on a $100,000 home. I don't care what community you're in. That's some really large millage rates. That's a hard ask of the taxpayers. Garvin Miller and I are working with the school district just down south, Tip City exempted schools. They're one of the few that passed back in March, 1 and 3. Their millage was 8 mils, 8.6, 8.8 mils. You guys are 5 mils. They would have loved to have the millage that we have. The reason why their millage was higher is at first they didn't have CPAP in the project like you guys did. So anyway, I'll get off the soapbox, but I wanted to make sure I point that out, is that there is some wins here. Now, that doesn't mean vote yes or vote no. That's your decision. But there are some very positive things going on with your school. So we're talking about $45,675,000. You saw the reason why. You saw the L5s. This should be $65 million if Garvin and the school didn't find that square footage. But we got it down to $45 million. You can finance a school facility over a maximum term of 37 years. That's why I'm sharing this bottom line here with you, and hopefully everyone can see it. This is the maximum term, according to the Ohio Revised Code, that you can finance a new school facility. Don't quote me on this, I should have looked at it before I come, but probably 68, 70%, I think those numbers are about right, of school bond issues that are approved by the voters are 37 years. Okay? And that's in the state of Ohio. Most of the schools that I have, like I said, I have a couple dozen, go 37 years. Not all. Tip City went 30 years. That's an example. But most go longer in order to keep the ask to the taxpayers as low as possible. Because we all understand, money's money, right? And let's face it, no one likes paying taxes. I'm sure the superintendent doesn't like paying taxes. But when I think you're born, you learn, I don't like paying taxes. But you need to pay taxes, of some sort in order to have the facility instead of a nice lecture hall like this. This reminds me of my days at OU, same type of facility. So 37 years maximum term is a property tax bond issue. The millage, if you go 37 years, would be 5.16 mils in the black. That's what you're going to see on the ballot language. So if this makes it to the ballot, and if we go 37 years, when you show up in November and vote, it's going to say 5.16 mils. Then in the black, you can see it's going to say $180.60. Right here. That's what you're going to see on the ballot. That's $180.60 per $100,000 home. However, one thing that we hope we have in the school district is a strong bond committee that's going to go out, because superintendent and treasurer can't really push this too hard legally. I'm not allowed to tell you to vote yes or no. None of us are allowed. So hopefully we have a strong bond committee that's able to get out and tell the story. Because there's a really good story here. Like I said, you have a lot of wins in this situation. Another win is you have 2.65 mils of bond millage that you're currently paying today. So you're paying 2.65 mils today. That's going to mature or pay off this year at the end of the year. So if you take that 2.65 mils you're paying today, subtract it from the 5.16, your net additional millage is 2.51 mils. And again, you might be saying, Mike, this mills, I don't understand. Just talk about dollars and cents. That's what I try to do here. On a $100,000 home, you're paying 180 on a new bond issue. If it's voted upon and it's approved, you get in 25, you're going to pay $180.80. Because you have bonds paying off in 24, $92.75 is going to go away. So your net additional millage above what you're paying today on a $100,000 home is 87.85. So again, your net additional costs above what you're paying today on a $100,000 home is $87.85. That's a really good win too. And essentially it's a brand new school facility, brand new athletic facilities with all the fields, parking lots, safety. I got 4 kids. Safety is a huge thing in my life. I got 4 kids. I worry every day they go to school. I'm glad the resource officer's here. I don't care who you are. 2 boats is a lot safer than 6 boats. It just is. There's not 6 of them in different buildings. So $87.85 additional in taxes per $100,000 home is a pretty small ask compared to a lot of the other school districts throughout the state of Ohio that have issues. That's a 37-year deal. If you want to go 30 years, we can do that too. The school hasn't made their mind up yet. So it's going to be up to the task force to make the recommendation to the board. The board is then going to decide what to put on the ballot. If the community speaks and says we want 30 years because that's what your home mortgage is, we can do that. Happy to do that. Just the net additional millage, the net additional costs go up a little bit. So it's going to cost you another $20 a year on a $100,000 home if you want to shorten the term 30 years. And that's purely just because we're stretching the principal payments out. So think about it. I like to dumb things down. Think about it. You guys all bought a car. I'm sure all of you guys have a car loan at some point. If you do a car loan for 3 years or do a car loan for 5 years, which payment's smaller? The 5 year, right? That's what we're doing here. So again, it's your decision which option you want to do. But that's why most schools do 37 years to keep the ask as small as possible. Stop me. I know this is really confusing. So if you have questions, please raise your hand. I'm happy to answer. Monica, you can go next, please. Oh, yes, sir.
It's not much of a question, but it's more of a comment. I was just reading online. It says that for every dollar you spend on public schools, your home value goes up $20. So just keep in mind that, the money that we're spending on this is is a dramatic investment in our community and the property values of this community. I mean, I used to live on the north side of Chicago, and they would throw money into public schools like nobody's brother because they knew it would drive their property value up. So I just think we need to keep that in the long sight of things in terms of paying extra money on our property taxes.
I heard that too. I wasn't sure what the dollar amount breakdown is. That's very helpful. Thank you for stating that. Yes, sir.
So what's the difference in amount that the district's going to pay for interest by going from 30 years to 37 years? So it reduces the monthly payment, but just like a car loan, you're gonna spend more just for the privilege of borrowing the money.
Yeah, it's definitely more. And I don't have the dollar amount right now with me, but it's definitely a lot more. You know, and I always think that's a very good question, a very common question. I get that a lot. And I always ask you, not asking you directly, but in general, when you bought your first home, put yourself back in your shoes when you bought your first home, how many of you went out and got a 10-year mortgage? How many of you went out and got a 30-year mortgage? And why do you do that? Keep the ask as small as possible, right? Because you couldn't afford a 30-year. Now you couldn't afford a 10-year. So you stretch the payment out over 30. You ever look to see what the difference in your mortgage payment would be if you go 10-year versus 30? It's very harsh. Don't do it, maybe. But that's a great question. I hear it a lot. But that's the reason why you stretch it out is because trying to keep this ask as small as possible for generations to come. And that's the other thing to keep in mind. It's just not your son or daughter, or if you have any kids, it's your daughter's daughters or your son's sons that are going to be going to school. So they should be paying their share of it as well. For your grandkids. That's a very good question. I just don't have the answer right now. I can get it to you if you want.
Is the interest rate the same for each ask though, or is that different as well?
On the term,
Correct.
it's when we sell bonds, and this is going to be a little too much, but stick with me. Each year has its own bond. So 2025 year bond, 26, 27. Each one's its own bond. So it's going to be 30 bonds or 37 bonds. The first 30 years is exactly the same if it's 30 or 37. But then you're tacking on 7 more years, so those rates will be a little bit higher. So all in all, the 37 is going to be on a blended basis, a little bit higher interest rate. But in today's market, an inverted yield curve, it's very minimal. Very minimal. We're talking 10, 15 basis points, which is 0.1%. Good question. Because it's all great questions, and we could go either way. Tip City wanted 30 years. Because they like the home mortgage, just like yourself. Most of my clients go 37 because they're looking at people on fixed income that can't afford a larger payment on a yearly basis. Yes, ma'am.
So I don't know if you remember from the task force, unfortunately, Treasurer Joyce DuPont's not here tonight, but Joyce was able to shave off, I think, 2 years off of our current bond. It wouldn't be up right now because she sold these bonds as the interest rates improved. So one thing that I wish she was here to tell you, she consistently does that. So she's very fiscally responsible with watching these rates, watching the bonds, and that's why we're out of this already now. So she'll continue to do that, and hopefully, no matter which way the taxpayers want us to go, we'll be able to take advantage of any tax change or rate changes and continue to do that.
A very good comment, and actually you saved me 5 minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you. It's just something else you want to talk about, science to death. A very good comment. Any other questions before I move on?
Yeah.
Yes, miss.
Could you explain the additional square footage that was on the other slides for 15 million?
That's you guys.
So what was your question?
What is it?
Like, what is it based on?
I just want to know what it was. I wasn't sure.
So with the high school, so filling up the high school with the number of bodies we have, there's essentially, with OFCC, I think this is correct, 298 kids that we're having to pay for that are not part of OFCC. So it was a little scary. Before we found that additional square footage and had it removed, they were looking at a PK4, right? PK4. So we're saying grade 5 through 8, we're going to be 100% locally funded. So with the square footage deduction, taking that, we're basically PK7 and change. So for Norwalk numbers, we're 298 kids that we're having to find a place for. So that's part of the square footage. When you say, how are we increasing? There's close to 300 kids that we're having to take care of because we're wanting to do this project.
And that was because the second floor was being included when it's not.
Correct. And the other challenge was this whole arts wing as well. When you say, what am I gonna do? So we have a beautiful art gallery, we have a beautiful performing arts center. To say, am I turning this into classrooms? Take the art gallery, am I gonna put a divider wall up, make that 3 classroom, 4 classroom, use a stage? So those were some challenges we had to work with OFCC and the whole process to say, this whole square footage, which is massive, will not count. Because to think we're gonna say to our community that we're gonna have grades 4 through 12 here. I was a longtime high school principal, and I would speak that we don't want 8th graders here. We wanna keep it as high school 9 through 12. But if you're saying, could we do 7 and 8? That's a tough one to say, can we do 7 and 8 even? But they were saying 4 through 12 here. So that's why we're huge benefit by finding that square footage and having that reduced. But we are still having to speak for 298 kids that we're having to pick up, given this whole format.
So,
Do you want to address the idea of the new valuation in October?
I will. I can address it now. The millage rates, everything I shared with you, are assuming the new growth in assessed value. So what we're talking about is, most of you probably know, as I shared before, price of gas went up, price of gallon of milk went up. Everything went up. McDonald's price went up. So did your home values, right? And everyone's aware that your neighbor's home is selling for $100,000 more than your home sold 4 or 5 years ago, right? So values are going up, home values are going up. So your county auditor is going to be having a reappraisal year beginning next year. County auditor is projecting where he thinks the growth in the tax base is going to be for this school district. Those values are going to go up. These millage rates are net millage rates. So it's assuming that, based on the new growth, estimated growth. Is that what you were asking me about?
Yes.
So the values are going up. It has nothing to do with the school, city. It's just your neighbor's home values are going up, your home values are going up. It's the world we live in. So there's going to be some additional taxes with other entities besides the school. Most of the school district's levies are fixed sum levies, so you're not going to see a huge increase in your taxes because of the school districts. A lot of those are fixed sum, fixed dollar amount, but even the school levies will go up, and the inside millage will go up slightly as well. Let me just make sure, ma'am, is your question okay on the square footage? Mm-hmm. Okay, you just wanted to see that, okay. Can you go back a slide? Okay, then go for it. I just want to make sure I miss one. Okay. So on that note, this is something, according to the task force, you guys asked me to do it. This is assuming 37 years, you see on the top right corner, the full bond amount, 2.51 mils. Your average home's 159.9 as of the US Census average home within your school district from last year. That value is going to go up, right? But right now it's 159.9. These are your home values, okay? I put this slide together to really kind of give you an idea of how much this is going to cost. Let's say you live in an average home, 159.9 in your school district. Daily costs, it's only 38 cents. So your average cost is only 38 cents on a daily basis to do a $45 million bond issue. I don't know about you, I got kids, I can probably find that change in my car. Weekly costs, monthly costs. So the gentleman asked about monthly payments. People a lot of times relate it to your monthly mortgage payment. It's about $11.71 on average home. Total additional taxes, or $140 on a yearly basis. In a standard home. And I see there's some people out here probably over 65, and they're probably qualify for the homestead exemption. If you don't mind, go to the next page. If you qualify for the homestead exemption, which if you are, I imagine you know that you qualify. You got to be over 65. You got to have a household income less than $34,600. And if you qualify for a homestead exemption, you get a tax benefit. Same average home. You qualify for the homestead exemption, 32 cents a day, $118 a year. Again, net additional costs above and beyond what you're paying today. So very reasonable costs. I know some people out there saying, well, it's not reasonable to me. I get it. You know, reasonable is subjective. So if it's not reasonable to you, and my apologies for saying that, but it's a pretty reasonable cost compared to other school districts, my other clients who are trying to pass bond issues. This is a pretty reasonable ask compared to that. I'll move on again. Any questions, please chime in. Go to the next slide, please. This is the slide that the lady was just mentioning, which I'm glad she did. Well, one of them anyway. I'm going to get to that. But this is what you're paying today. If you look at your tax bill, you go on the county auditor website, look at your tax bill. You see in 23, the bond millage was 2.75 mils. 24 was 2.65 mils. And this is what I'm trying to illustrate the net additional costs. So this orange box, that's the net new costs to the taxpayers. 2.51 mil increase. So this millage is going to fall off. The gray is going to fall off this year when the bonds pay off. And then beginning in 25, you're only paying on the new bonds. So it's going to show 5.16 mils, but it's only 2.51 additional mils. Go to the next slide, please. This is one I like, especially when it works. But I really like for you guys, and I feel bad because I work with Edison Local School District. I work with Willard, Bellevue, New London, Monroeville. So I feel bad talking about this because some of my clients are really good clients and they're not as favorable. But your school district is very favorable. From an affordability standpoint, I know everyone, I'm the same way. I look at my bill and I'm like, darn it, I know my neighbors don't pay this much tax, right? Or why am I paying more taxes than my neighboring school district? This is assuming the average home value, $159,900, the average income of 80, let's call it 83,000. You pick that Jane Smith, that Joe Smith up, and you take their house and you move it to your neighbor's school district. This is the total amount of property tax and school district only income tax. So any property tax, city, joint fire district, library, any property tax, and school district income tax. Right now, you're paying almost $2,900 a year on average in your school district. With the new bond, you'll be paying $3,040, $3,039. But even with the new bond issue, you're paying less than Bellevue, New London, Western Reserve, Perkins, Monroeville. You're paying a lot less taxes than your neighboring districts. And to me, that makes me feel good. I wish I had this story at my house. You know, I live in Westerville, which is central Ohio. It's one of the highest taxing authorities in the state. So I'm the big smart banker, and somehow I lived in a school that has the highest taxes. We won't go there though. But for you guys, I love to live here because your taxes are very, very low. If you lived in Westerville, it would be almost 3 times this for the same size. So very, very jealous of you guys. You guys have low taxes, and even with the next school facility, your taxes are still going to be lower than most of your neighboring districts. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any cost benefit to secure a yes vote sooner as opposed to later? You're talking about inflation and everything going up. To get the process started quicker, if we were able to secure a yes vote for this, would that be a cost benefit for the community? The quicker that we can give that vote?
That's such a good softball question. I love that question. I didn't even plant that question. That's a really good question. 100%. 100%. That's one of the reasons why the community has to think hard about should you vote yes or vote no in November. I keep using the analogy. I try to make life simple and talk about gas prices and milk. The costs aren't coming down. And you go through McDonald's, and I saw McDonald's workers making like $20 an hour. I was making like $4.25 when I was that age, you know? The salary at McDonald's or at the construction companies, they're not going to take a pay cut. Costs are only going to go up. People are only going to continue to make more money. Garmin can answer that question a little more, but inflation, with or without inflation, how it is today, costs are always going to go up. That's the truth. So yes, the sooner we get approval for the bond issue, the sooner the architect can start the construction, the sooner the costs are fixed and stop bleeding.
I think Peyton's gonna address
Yeah,
that.
I actually wanted to say something as well. I'm Peyton from the OFCC. So I know we've kind of been saying if you guys don't pass in 16 months, that's that magic number with the OFCC. If you don't pass in 16 months from the July commission, so that gives you this November, next May, and then next November, you would then become a lapsed district, which is with CFAP. And then you guys would have to go back through this whole process again with the OFCC, and that would put you, if your assessed valuations go up, that would put your local share higher than 20% maybe like it is now, and you would have all of the inflation tacked on that as well. So your cost for the school will go up, and then you guys could have to pay more of whatever that cost is.
Right, every April, there's a construction cost update to the master plan numbers. And so this past April, it was 7%. So that's just, typically in the past, before 2019, it was 3% every year. You just kind of add that number. And then COVID hit and things went up a little,
Yeah,
quite a
it was
bit.
15% last year.
Yeah,
So
15%
we're
last
trending
year.
downward, but you never know what can happen.
But you trend downward, but it's still positive.
Yes.
You're not
yes.
talking about going negative.
Trending downward back towards 3%.
So costs are only gonna go up. It's the only thing you can count on in life. Costs are gonna go up. Interest rates are still low too. Are they as low as they were a year or two ago? No, I wish we would have had this bond issue approved by the voters and we did it, 2 years ago. But overall, interest rates are still relatively low in this room that we live in. It's a very good question. I answered okay? Thank you. This is the slide I meant that the treasurer was trying to point out the other day. This is the historical existing bond millage. So what you're paying on this building right now. The millage back in 1999 when the bond issue was approved was 4.33 mils. And as the lady just mentioned, over time, that millage has dropped. It has dropped for a number of reasons. One, because costs never go down, right? So all your home values have been increasing over time, your tax base has been growing. So with the voted property tax bond issue, the county auditor always collects whatever is needed to repay the bonds. So as the tax base grows, because the new homes being built, new businesses being built, the tax base gets larger, so therefore the millage rate shrinks. So that brings down the cost to all of you on your existing mills. The other thing is this school district, I know Joyce for a long time, she's an extremely strong treasurer. She knows her numbers backwards and forwards. She understands that she's very conservative, and she understands the value of refinancing. Just like I'm sure everyone in this room has refinanced their home mortgage, right? Probably not recently because rates went up. But I'm sure everyone refinanced their home at some point. Joyce is such a good treasurer. She's always looking for a way to reduce costs. And one of those ways is to refinance debt. And because we refinance debt, we lower the millage. And then to your point, this last go around, because she was being proactive and she knew this project was on the horizon, she actually shortened the term by 2 years. And she did that to be proactive. And that, again, shows the management strength of the superintendent, the treasurer, the administration. It shows the management strength to be thinking about the future and be paid off the bonds early. Otherwise, we would have been collecting 2.65 mils for 2 more years. But now we'll match it up nicely for then the millage falls off for us to get the net new millage. I see everyone shaking their head, so hopefully that means I explained that okay. Next slide. I think that's it. Okay, so that's the finance side. I know it's complicated. I try to keep it simple, related to your personal life a little bit. But any questions? I'm here to answer questions. Any questions I can answer? Anything you're confused about? Yes.
You're talking bond issues, either 30 years or 37 years.
No.
What committee decides that and puts it on the ballot?
So it could be any year we want. I showed 30 and 37. The task force will be the one that kind of gives the recommendation to the board. And then the board's the ultimate decision maker on what term they think is the right term for the bond issue. So if you have input, we welcome any input, or out loud today or call the superintendent afterwards and talk to him.
So
But any input would be beneficial.
basically going back to the flow chart of how that is, like executive, the board's the top, executive, task force, community. So those arrows are going both ways on that. Ultimately, Board of Ed, but that's going to be like, we have to hear the voices. And obviously, when you start giving options, because you can do any number between, you can do 33, 35, but you give too many options and you kind of confuse everybody, and you have to ultimately come down to what are you doing and make the argument, because we would know if we would take a poll, you want 30, if you want 37, like it might be a number where like ultimately like, I don't know if it's gonna be close to that 51, 50, where's it gonna be? Ultimately, a decision has to be made, but like, this is the time that we want to hear from everyone to say, what is the smart move? Personally, when I'm looking at that, I would say I like the 30-year, that aspect. But when you look at, and talking to Mike then, and look at where LFIs have elevated to, then you're saying potentially that doesn't make sense. Because before, we get to 46 million, we have to make a calculus on where our community thinks, and there's a psychological component to that. What that millage is it 100, is it under 80? Those things come into play, and that's where we all need to be smart, because ultimately the board will have to say, here's what makes sense for us.
Good question now. Any other questions? Well, thank you, everyone.
So what are the next steps? One of the things that we're going to continue to work on here very quickly is just finalizing those LFIs. There are some questions with bus garage being one of them that we talked about in the administrative space. So getting that shored up and making sure that we get that included. And then there's going to be some more informational meetings. There'll be more community meetings as this process continues. I know Brad mentioned about having some potential Rotary meetings.
That was today, actually.
Okay, you have the Rotary meeting today. Okay. So there'll be more informational meetings. There's going to be information on the website as well. And I believe there's a spot for questions. Is that correct, Jen? On the website.
Yep.
You can submit questions. The process, this isn't the last time that you'll hear about it. There's information that will be readily available. So, yeah.
Is this slide available for download, or is it for consumption?
Yeah, this is going to be going up on the website. Yes.
So this looks like a great plan. I like how you're building for the future. Is there any possibility of going to like multiple schools again? Because we recently moved here, and one of the reasons why we moved to Norwalk was for the opportunity for our child to be able to walk to school. And it seems that with everything moving down here, it's going to be out of the question for us. Is there any possibility, or is this kind of set in stone that this is the way forward with all the work done? That we should be one big school.
Yeah, based on going back to our question earlier here, that is the footprint that is based on this acreage across from Norwalk High School, because there's no other place to do that. And when you talk about the inefficiencies of, we can save money. We're not having the same.
I understand about the inefficiencies, but more just like, okay, I was only able to walk to school for a couple of years. Just a sense of independence, learning those skills of, time management, navigation, and all that.
Right.
It's kind of hard to put a dollar on that.
Right, and we are trying, obviously working with the city and the parks, we're looking at ways to bring trails. So you have bike to school, walk to school, about how, because we have a lot of things within our community that have trail access, like how to get kids safely. So I know Dan Ballman can speak to that very well, about pathways that we have to get from residential to a school zone, residential to our rec center, residential to our reservoir, where things are happening in this community. We want those to take place. So as far as location, that's pretty solid where that thinking is, but clearly we're talking about, we have a soccer field. So between the baseball, softball, then goes to Christie where the middle school is, that soccer field there, of connecting those pathways so you clearly can maximize your kids, that those can safely walk and bike to school, because that's critical. I mean, from my standpoint, that physical component is critical. You want kids to have that ability and not say your only option is a family member or a friend taking you to school or using school transportation. So that's going to be built into it. I think the city is doing a nice job with some of that connections of trails and pathways to make it safe. When you say you're little, well, I trust that my little can safely get from point A to point B when it might be crossing several, key intersections.
One of the challenges too from the financial side is, and OCC can talk more about this, but because of their model where they think there should only be 2 buildings, right? We can't build for different small buildings, like we had the neighborhood buildings. We can't renovate because it's above the 66%, right, Monica? So it's-
You can, and you can build 15 schools, but it's all at your cost. So it's really trying to find that, the best, most economical, but most efficient use of space as well.
Then you lose the state money if you do something they don't.
Well, they would cap what they were going to give you, and then you just,
Yeah,
Raise
which you're capped right now, that $2 million, 2.4, I think that was on the slides earlier, that is above and beyond the state cap already.
How much is the state giving?
Was that sufficient or not? It was.
We have rules we have to follow to get the state money, but the city is working on bring paths and things to make it more walkable for kids in schools with their locations.
Yeah, so as far as location, solid on that piece, and we're trying to make the pathways and trails so you can bike, you can walk. I mean, Mike County is SRO, like, we are working, we want those things to happen for our kids, so that is an option for them.
Yeah. So the answer there, I believe it's a 52 million is what the states.
I don't know whether you can answer this or not. I kind of think you can't, but if.
Just accept it.
No. I probably won't get it presented right. But $1 million worth of new building. How much does $1 million equate to on the bond? Is it 0.2%? Is it 0.4? Do you have any idea?
Not sure if I follow your question exactly.
Well, I'm looking at, let's just say the bus garage. It was 1.8 million.
Gotcha. Okay, so 1 million additional on a millage basis, what does that equate to?
What I'm getting at is by eliminating 1.8 million on the garage, does that equate to $2 in expenses? That doesn't make any sense to quibble about $2.
Yeah, that's the easy answer. I just don't have my document here. So I can send it to you. You're exactly right. I like where your mind's at. I don't think the 45 million is totally set in stone on all those projects. It's still a little bit being discussed. I don't want to speak for the school, but I think it's still being discussed a little bit. And if you remember last time I mentioned, we're going to get 45 million on day one, and we're going to invest that money. The school's going to invest that money. So 45 million times, right now it's 5.44 in Star, Ohio. That's going to be a significant amount of interest earnings on that money. And that interest earnings can be used to fund portions of this project as well. So where I think you're going when you say that is, when you think about some of these bus garages, and do we really need them or not, or should we include them now versus waiting? That's stuff for us to still kind of figure out exactly, is it 45 or is it 44 or is it 46? It's going to be around that area. But we also have some other cushion money that we can maybe use to pay for some additional projects and offset some additional costs. But if you give me your name and number, I can send you very quickly what $1 million afterwards. Give me your name and number, and I'll send that to you. But it's going to be minimal.
Based on the numbers from before, it's approximately 0.11 mils. So 1/45 of the amount that's cost per annual. So 0.11 is the amount per million.
You should be doing my job. My job will call me afterwards. Thank you for that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
All right, our timing is perfect. We're getting close to 7 o'clock hour for orchestra. If you want to see why our district is special, have a seat next door because you will be amazed. These are high school kids and you would think they're college and beyond. I guarantee that. So we have time for cookies and water and head next door. So I appreciate you all coming tonight. There'll be a lot more discussions. Like I said, my number, call me, come see me. I like face-to-face better than emails and calls even. So come to central office. I will talk to anyone. Thank you.
Yeah, 30. That's what I did. Oh,
Thank you.